Greetings, YouTube. Greetings, everyone. And once again, please, for Doctor Who Fridays, welcome my regular guests, Koki.
Howdy.
And you, James.
Hello there, this is James Uscraft, James 1978.
And now, one of the things about early Doctor Who is how they're full of game changers. There might be some things that seem repetitive, but, is it a history show? Is it a time travel show, a space travel show, a monster show? Is it science fiction meets history? Is it just weird stuff happening? And here we have Doctor Who meets classical mythology, which is a bit of a change. I anticipated that this would be one that you'd both really like, and Koki, of course, you've just seen it, so your first thoughts?
I did really like it. I thought that it was clever. The Cyclops is just a guy with one eye, and reconstruction-wise, I mean, it's obviously not the best. I found it hilarious that they're using essentially animated GIFs in the reanimate and the reconstruction. But no, I this one was unique from other historicals in that they intervened a bit more directly in the flow of history, which was a big no-no for
considering
some...
that it's not actually history. That is...
Yes, that is true. But yeah, the Doctor being a god, which reminded me of Cave of Bones a little bit, but even though he wasn't referred to as a god, I guess, I don't know. My mind just did that. But yeah, I just found it very entertaining thing. New companion. I did not expect that at all. And I guess I'll talk about the new companion later, but yes, they did the thing that they sort of reverted back to that thing where, the whole plot is they're separated and they need to get back together, but it didn't feel as bad this time. Maybe it's just arbitrary on how I'm feeling when I see the serial, but I enjoyed this one.
A few things there. The recon was very difficult. This isn't a telesnap reconstruction, because as I recall, they didn't have any telesnaps. So I think there's some publicity shots. There's obviously pictures of the First Doctor and Stephen and Vicky, not too difficult. So you can reuse some stuff. Although from the few clips there are, we do know the costumes that they were wearing.
The fact that they get photos of people in modern-day replica Greek and Trojan battle dress and literally Photoshop the faces of the actors.
I noticed that. It's so weird looking. It's that's not his face. But, I was just thinking maybe it's just an awkward angle, but that's what they did. They photoshopped it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I played a bit of a part in this because I recommended, there's a Robin Hood film that has one of those actors in, and yeah, so that literally if you can get images of the actor about the right age and the hair's not too different, then just a desperate, the amount of work that went into a reconstruction with almost nothing visual. So yes, hats off to Derek and the guys at Loose Cannon for this one, because this probably was one of their hardest recon jobs.
Having to actually reconstruct the wooden horse.
Yeah.
But because, I don't know if you noticed, Koki, those are actual video shots of a wooden horse on wheels that has been deliberately knocked together to make it look as cheaply and as quickly done as possible.
Okay.
I think when we talk about interfering with history, but is it really history, of course, the Doctor dismisses the Trojan horse as something Homer made up. But maybe he was meant to make the myth real, and that was always going to happen. I mean, that's the thing about timey-wimey, isn't it?
Yeah, but we've got to remember, though, that at the end of the day, we could argue about if this was real, but no, it was really just a bit of fun. You think the Siege of Troy, you think Homer's Iliad, you think the Trojan horse. It could not be the Siege of Troy without a Trojan horse. So this whole, no, of course, it's a myth, oh, damn it, we'll build it anyway. Was really for a laugh. And yes, I just loved the comedy element in this so much. Although I despise things like the Romans and the Time Meddler, it's the style of the comedy in this is absolutely perfect. Fans of The Simpsons, does anyone remember the Frasier crossover episode where they got the actor, of course, Kelsey Grammer, the actor who played Frasier, also plays Sideshow Bob. Yeah. So they got the actor who plays Niles in to be Sideshow Bob's brother Cecil in the series. It's just that kind of highbrow, not even necessarily highbrow, but that kind of sporting wit between upper-class people. The scene where Stephen is posing as a Greek warrior and surrenders to Paris is absolutely side-splitting. I've watched it about 17 times today. I love it so much. Achilles! Paris seeks his revenge. and then, you are Trojan, I am Greek. That is quarrel enough. Actually, I do think that this whole thing has been taken a little too far. And honestly, that whole Helen business was just a misunderstanding.
She's always getting abducted.
when
freaking Mario Brothers.
Yeah, when Stephen pretends to be defeated and yields, that sort of thing just isn't done. As if he'd used the wrong fork at dinner. You don't just surrender to your opponents.
Yeah.
Just this kind of upper-class English attitude. But who would have thought that... what's the name of that kind of 1920s drama type thing?
What, melodrama?
Something Abbey. You've talked about it.
Sorry. You accused me of Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey. Who would have thought that the ruling family of Troy would be bit part characters from Downton Abbey?
Yeah, it's interesting because I suppose it's A, comedy, and B, thinking how do we make these characters relatable to our audience. So it's not so much imagining what the Greeks and Trojans would have been like, but rather let's give them something the audience will get.
Again, unlike the Aztecs, where there is a large amount of historical evidence, fortunately the Spaniards did take a great many notes before they completely wiped out the civilization. But unlike that, basically the archaeology wasn't there at that point. I don't think they'd found Troy until the 1980s. They'd actually found the remains. All they had to go on was Homer's Iliad, not to be confused with the Odyssey when you talk about the Cyclops. Cocky. So they just put that in as kind of a nodding reference to Homer's later work. But yes, as you say, there's nothing really... there's no evidence to go on. We've got absolutely no idea what the Trojans were like. So why would the gift to the valiant foes be a horse? Well, if a historical theory, if the Trojans were from Central Asia, then like the Mongols 2,000 years later, then they would be a horse-based society.
Yeah.
So it's it's completely conceivable that they would worship horses. I'm not sure if the Mongols ever did, but that is obviously one historical theory which informed it. And rather than it just being a gift, and oh yes, we'll take it into... But no, the idea that it was their god, the great horse of Central Asia that had scared the enemy away.
Yeah,
that does make much more sense. Although again, it's just a thought experiment.
It tries to make sense of a story that was never convincing.
Exactly.
So I remember Eddie Izzard's routine on the subject, like, after all, you'd leave some dog poo behind. Why would you?
I did like the role that religion played on the Greek side of it as well. You know, like people are getting all huffy about having their gods blasphemed or offended. That's not something I expected to see in this show.
Oh,
but
okay.
Again, it's kind of you can blaspheme against anyone's gods, just not the real God.
Yeah.
The real God is always the one you happen to believe in.
and you know that no ancient Greeks or Trojans wrote into the BBC?
Yeah, again, talking about the comedy and kind of upper-class backbiting, when Agamemnon and his brother, whose name I forget for the moment, in the first episode, talking about it. Well, you should have... Why didn't you challenge Paris to mortal combat in the... they were talking... Before that, they were talking about the war. Sorry, I got my comments out of sequence. But we've been here for 10 years. What, don't you want to get Helen back? To be honest, I was glad to see the back of her. And I can't keep chasing after her every time she allows herself to be kidnapped. Turns me into a laughing stock.
Do you think like she was like the inspiration for Princess Toadstool?
Yeah, well... the trope is old as time,
You've genuinely got to wonder what Princess Peach, as she is known now, if she and Bowser do have this, if they do have a little arrangement. Olive oil.
Shigeru Miyamoto. This isn't entirely related, but Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator, basically said that he always saw them as actors in a play. That's why they can do the same skit over and over again, yet apparently still be on friendly enough terms to go go-karting.
Yeah, still nobody resents Bowser for kidnapping the princess every bloody game now. It's just what he does. It's his role in life.
That's his job. They do this skit. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It keeps Mushroom Kingdom interesting.
It helps to boost the tourism.
So, of course, it's one of those things because, for a while now, of course, tomorrow, new Doctor Who will be giving us some Robin Hood, and I had a feeling of trepidation that sort of Doctor Who can't do that, and yet this is an example of actually, classic Who basically could very easily have done. This isn't any more or less authentic. Koki, is this kind of serial, this kind of delving into myths and legends something that you'd like to see more of in Doctor Who?
Yes. If they handle it like they did this, I would love to see more of it. I just thought it was really clever, creative, I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with the more recent Hercules movie.
Oh, the one with that guy in
Kevin Sorbo, the man who just basically sold out his career and became an anti-atheist bigot.
He hates black people too.
Yeah,
he's a multi-bigot, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that. John Hurt is in it. But in any case, it basically plays on the idea that, the mythology, it's there, but the Hydra was just a man in a suit. The Centaur, it's just if you look at it, its silhouette in the sun a certain way, it looks like a Centaur. It plays on the idea that the myths are based on truth, but it's just that people were confused, and I guess the Cyclops, the character of the Cyclops, so he didn't contribute much to the story. I just thought that was a nice touch. It's like, oh, so there we go.
Yeah.
But also they did the comedy, they did the whole thing really well.
Yes, it's the whole point you were making there about myths based on fact. When Marco Polo did return from the Orient Cafe, whatever term they used in Venice, he told stories which were interpreted as stories of men with faces in their chests, when what he meant was that people in China were so much shorter that their head only came up to his chest. But again, probably problems with interpretation and the overactive imaginations of storytellers. But going back to...
Yeah, people also thought that Marco Polo had encountered unicorns, but it's most likely he meant rhinos.
Exactly. That's one of the most famous memes on this issue, that unicorns do exist, horses with horns, it's just that we call them rhinoceroses.
Uh-huh. But yes, sorry, I interrupted you, carry on.
But going back to the point you were making before, if it's handled correctly, I wouldn't... Again, Moffat jar, yes, I know, yes. I wouldn't trust Moffat to handle a tea tray at this point.
And the Robin Hood episode itself isn't written by Stephen Moffat. I can't actually think of the name of the...
But as series showrunner, as the producer of the series, etc.
Mm-hmm. Wait, which episode are you referring to?
The Robin Hood one
there's Robots of Sherwood, which is on tomorrow, Koki.
Oh, okay.
But, yes. So, again, it's entirely a question of how it was handled. Again, one of our go-to references, Dallas Buyers Club. I absolutely love to see a Hollywood film deal with transgender issues and AIDS and other serious GSM realities, particularly the prejudice and so forth, which existed in the 1980s and still exists to this very day. But I don't want to see Dallas Buyers Club.
We're gonna have to get a Dallas Buyers Club jar as well.
Dallas Buyers Club. What else is there?
MRAs. I think I'm really annoyed at myself because I said, all Doctor Who Fridays recordings, I'm going to have an actual jar with coins in, and instead of saying Moffat jar, I was going to shake it next to the microphone, and I fucking forgot.
I have a jar, I think. Yeah, it's right here. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
If I can... It sounds weird, but yeah.
Aha, Koki is now officially in charge. He is the master of the Moffat jar. So be warned, James.
But still, whether we're talking about He Who Must Not Be Named, Joss Whedon, or anyone else who is J.J. Abrams, who is a major name in modern entertainment, if they did try to remake something like The Mythmakers, or did try to make classic mythology for the 21st century, it would just be the same crowd-pleasing cliches with minimal reference to the actual text. It would just be the same old soap opera and pantomime comedy rubbish in fancy dress. Yeah, it would be a panto, basically.
But I haven't actually seen Hercules. I might do, but I'm going to really want to punch Kevin Sorbo in the face But yeah.
I was a fan of Andromeda, at least the first 2 seasons and parts of season 3. So imagine, with him being the last survivor, last bastion of an ideal civilization devoid of prejudice or bigotry or discrimination, attempting to rebuild the Commonwealth and recreate those ideals. So imagine how much of a blow it is for me.
Well, yes. So I suppose the trouble is that he wouldn't have been famous then, and casting is about type. If they're auditioning rather than checking availability, which they do when you've reached a certain level. And so it'll have been, they wanted somebody with that height, build, colouring, what have you.
Yeah,
and to be honest,
just the fact that when he's making these noble speeches about inclusiveness and freedom, etc., he doesn't believe a word of it.
Well, but I can think of an unfortunate example of that, which of course is Mel Gibson in Man Without a Face.
Yeah.
Where he does the "if you prick us, do we not bleed" bit, and then you find out this is one of the biggest anti-Semites on the planet. But anyway, we've got a tiny bit off topic.
But yes, going back to what you were saying about the type, the cast.
It's just he looks like a goodie by our era's ideal of a goodie. He has a goodie's face.
But no, I was going to get back to the Mythmakers. Ian's role in so many of the later serials of season 2 was to go off and rescue Barbara because they had nothing for him to do. And now in the Mythmakers, it's good to see that Stephen's taken up that role as well, going off to rescue Vicky even though she didn't actually need rescuing, and by turning up in Troy dressed in Greek armour and saying her name, get both of them flung into the dungeon. And Vicky slightly calls him out on it. You're the one who
Hey, Vicky is legit gone.
Yes.
She...
Actually, I was going to do that as its own topic. So, does anybody have any remaining general thoughts on the Mythmaker specifically before we talk about the leaving of Vicky?
And the arrival of Katerina. But
Indeed.
no, I think we've said really all there is to be said. Just that scene with Paris and Stephen, but time to move on with things.
Is there anybody out there who hasn't actually heard the soundtrack to the Mythmakers or seen the Recon job? In fact, this time I think I'll link it, because there's a whole Dailymotion channel just for Recons. And recommend, yes, it's visually a bit difficult because they've had to really sew this together from nothing. And actually, hats off, as I said, to Derek and the other guys at Loose Ends. Koki, do you have any kind of anything else to add on the Mythmakers as a serial?
Watch it. I mean, yeah, visually kind of poo, but same with Marco Polo. Still awesome.
Yeah,
a great story can make up for almost anything.
Yes, I certainly, touch wood, hope that they do find this one. Okay, so I'm actually going, before we do a Vicky segment, I actually discovered quite a few interesting things. Now, we talked about her being Susan Mark II. Actually, the first interesting thing to point out, we've just watched a whole season of Maureen O'Brien as Vicky, but she came in a little bit into season 2, she left a little bit into season 3, so we'll call it a season. So we've had a year of Maureen O'Brien. When she did The Rescue, she'd just come out of drama school. What we've just watched the last few weeks is Maureen O'Brien's first ever acting job, which I think you have to applaud. And as for her being Susan Mark II, she immediately stood up for herself. They asked her to cut her hair short and dye it black. And she said, "Oh, so you want Carol Ann Ford back then?" And they allowed her to carry on without looking like a Susan clone, which I think was a good decision. So well done, Maureen O'Brien. And another curious thing, what people will be seeing on the screen now is a goodbye to Vicky Pallister. I think this might be the first example of a Doctor Who companion having a surname that never made it into a finished episode. Or correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think she's ever.
I've watched it I've watched all of Vicky's episodes three times now, and I have a pretty good memory for these things. Never once do they ever mention her surname.
I suppose there's never a situation where somebody would call her Miss Pallister.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those interesting things, and I think I always found her definitely to be an appealing character. I don't actually know why Maureen O'Brien left. I do know one of the objections people have is that twice in as many seasons, their way of hurriedly writing out a young woman was that she falls in love with somebody she's known for about a week, which doubtless will come up when I open up the floor. Koki, we've finished the Vicky era, or Vicky Pallister era. I know that you preferred her to Susan, or at least the acting, and I think to some extent the character. Now she's gone, what were your thoughts and feelings, and will you miss her?
Well, my thought is, how would you want to live in ancient Greek times? But then again, Susan also left in a very sort of post-apocalyptic, well, not post-apocalyptic, but, it's a very sort of dreadful scenario, and ancient times, they're bad too, so I don't know, but you're right in, bringing up how Vicky left was just kind of falling in love with someone from the past. Well, I don't even know. I guess in Susan's case, it would be someone from the distant future, but, technologically from the past. Is it clear that Gallifrey is older than Earth yet, or?
No, they've not really decided. They've not even decided to call it Gallifrey. They've not, we know nothing of the Doctor's homeworld apart from Susan's physical description with the burnt orange sky and stuff like that, which of course they still keep in the CGI recreations of Gallifrey in the new series. But yeah, it's all very shady. Vicky, I think she said 25th century, and of course we never see her era, her time. I suppose you're expecting her to be returned, but she was an orphan, don't forget. But yes, it would be very odd to go from what will presumably be, what I'm imagining, a futuristic kind of utopia that survived the Dalek invasion and everything. Okay, well, the way she describes it, they're certainly very advanced. So yes, she's gone back to a very no-mod cons era, even by our standards. And I'd imagine living on the TARDIS is reasonably cushy. It is a bit odd. You would probably put more thought into a decision like that.
But don't you understand that true love conquers all and can overcome any adversity? And Maureen O'Brien had come to the end of her contract and they needed to get rid of her somehow.
But another thing is that the new companion, I really like that they got someone from the past. Now, they can write her well, that is to say that, that they keep her mindset from the past, that, because I think she didn't know what a key was, or something like that. Like, they didn't know how the door was shut, but, in any case, the idea that there's someone who, is even less familiar with what's going on than the viewer is, can be written well. It can be written horribly and just have, completely disregard the fact that she's from ancient times. Or, because I've discussed companions from different time periods with other people, and no one's ever mentioned her to me before. So I'm thinking that there's a third option here, which is she dies next serial. I'm calling it. Let's see how right I am.
Well, obviously we're saying nothing.
Maybe not dies, but goes away. I don't know. That sounds fuller, though.
Yes, and of course, this is a reference to the fact that we now have, next week it will be the epic 12-parter Dalek Master Plan.
Oh, 10-parter. The Christmas and New Year's don't count.
Oh, God. Yes, well, for the sake of completism and so that we can gauge Koki's what the fuck moment. Yes.
Does this mean I have to watch it again, though? Oh, God.
Are the Christmas and New Year's episodes not very good?
It's what the fuck am I watching?
Is Dalek Claus a thing? Because I'm just trying to think of the absolute worst thing that could happen, and the Dalek Santa Claus is probably the worst.
Okay. Sorry, when you said Dalek Claws, I thought you meant they're going to replace the plunger, but no, I get the pun now.
Oh, right, yes, Kabumtish, yes. But yes, there's a lot going for this next serial. And let me see, well, I suppose... Oh, actually, James, I haven't actually... that was a tangent. We haven't... yes, your comments on Maureen O'Brien, Vicky, and the Vicky era.
Although you say that she took a stand by not cutting her hair and dyeing it black, in the beginning she was Susan Mark II, just with red hair, longer red hair. However, as the series has progressed, she has become more independent. The main complaint about Susan, Carol Ann Ford, in the role, is that she was always screaming every 5 seconds. And that was the writer's fault. That was the director's fault more than Carol Ann Ford's. So, thinking specifically back to the Space Museum, the Youth Revolution, etc., that the kind of sideways nod to the rise of the teenager. And also in The Chase, when she's complaining about being redundant, etc., she has become more independent. I mentioned before about how Stephen runs off in Greek armour to try and save her. But no, why do you think I needed rescuing? Didn't you think I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself? In The Time Meddlers, one of the few things I like about it, the fact that Stephen is rushing headlong into trouble and Vicky is tutting and following along behind saying, okay, you're going to get yourself into danger and it's my job to get you out of it. Also referring to The Chase, the time-space visualizer. Well, why didn't you tell me what it was? I could have fixed it for you instead of letting me fiddle about with it. But, yes, as stupid as it was that she fell in love and decided to stay in Troy, I do think that was kind of a one final demonstration of her independence. That yes, instead of anyone who was dependent, anyone who was scared would have run back into the TARDIS, hit the dematerialization control, and never looked back. But no, she is prepared to stay with the man who she's just met. Same with Susan. Their world, Troy, has been destroyed. This person's world has been destroyed, but she is willing to stay and help him rebuild another one.
Well, yeah, I suppose you can put that positive spin on it. I would say with Susan, though, that there was that thing of the Doctor knowing the decision would be too difficult for her, and hence making the difficult decision for her, like tearing off the plaster or band-aid, as Americans say.
But no, I do feel, same with Ian and Barbara leaving, her story, her character arc was concluded. In The Rescue, she was a lonely orphan who had nowhere else to go. Now she's an independent young woman who instead of looking for a place is going to make her own. Okay, no toilet facilities, no electricity,
yeah,
no running water.
I suppose the worst thing would be if you got sick.
Oh, yeah.
Not just because Vicky might have no immunity to some of the diseases that existed then, but because it would she could die knowing that certain medicines from the 25th century or even 20th or 21st century could have saved her. But so yes, huge gamble. And damn it, I had another thought just then. Damn it.
I don't think that this will be too much of a spoiler. We have talked about it during Mission to the Unknown. There were scheduling problems with the Daleks Master Plan, which we'll be watching next week. There were production problems, meaning that the Mythmakers was essentially just shoved in. Therefore, it is my sincere belief that the whole thing of Vicky leaving was thrown together. It was thrown together at the last minute. She was supposed to leave part way into the Daleks Master Plan. Then, it would have finished before the Christmas and New Year episode. Everything would have been fine, but there were production problems. They had to film what was ready to be filmed.
Yeah.
So they had to do the Mythmakers first, put together this whole thing with Troyus, them living happily ever after, instead of Troyus dying alone on the plains of Troy, thinking that Vicky had betrayed him. And so yes, it was a bit thrown together at the last minute. It would have made much more sense if, without spoiling too much, if Vicky had left in the next episode. But again, given both Dalek Master Plan and the Mythmakers, given the massive limitations on the series, the fact that stage plays, you just have to do what there is. If something goes wrong, you have to ad lib. If the actor's sick, you have to have an understudy. They still did the best job they possibly could.
Yeah, I mean, Dalek Master Plan was an ambitious production, and it wasn't ready to go.
It's simply that Maureen O'Brien's contract was up then. It would if only they'd been able to do the Master Plan first.
See, now I really think that this companion is not going to last. I mean, my main reasoning is, why have I never heard of her? And, that's what I'm thinking. She's only been around for a couple of episodes and then she was gone. But now you're talking about Vicky could have gone next episode. It's okay, so maybe she does something that was written for Vicky, but I don't know. That being said, was I the only person who figured, when the people were surrounding Zeus, or the Doctor pretending to be Zeus, why didn't the Doctor just say, "I'll be on my way, I'll take my temple," and then just ride off on the TARDIS, avoiding the full ordeal entirely?
That is the issue with almost any kind of science fiction story, Doctor Who or otherwise. It's just, why don't you leave? This was the main point about the very first series. Into the second series, contriving more and more elaborate reasons why they couldn't just run back into the TARDIS, buried in rubble, a Dalek invasion of Earth, having fallen off a cliff, the Romans, trapped in the burial tomb, the Aztecs, been seized as the property of the great Khan, Marco Polo.
And I noticed that they always seem to live it up in these ancient times things. They're never really having, they always seem to reflect the good, or at least the luxurious of that time period, as opposed to,
Well, not always. Ian and Barbara were sold as slaves.
And in the Time Meddler as well. But even then, they were incredibly healthy and well-fed, and not in as much dirt and stench as would have existed in Saxon times. But that's the thing, though. Going back to the point about Vicky choosing to live in a primitive society by our standards, let alone by hers, we just don't realise how dependent we are. Our modern conveniences are so much a part of our everyday lives.
Yeah.
We look back on the ancient world and just don't realise how different life would have been for them. A few days ago, for example, I posted a status about this on Facebook. Our water was cut off. It was only for about 45 minutes because somebody across the road was doing building work. They turned off their stop tap, which turned off our water supply as well, without telling us, but obviously because they didn't know that the two buildings were connected.
Yeah.
But, yes, just no running water. How does that change our lives? It was only for 45 minutes, but it was a real eye-opener. And again, when you're dealing with this kind of true love conquers all romanticism, etc., and it's just a TV show, you don't stop and think, hang on a second, the minute she cuts her leg, she's going to die of gangrene. Or she's probably going to, if she does have kids with this guy, she's probably going to die in childbirth. It's not exactly pleasant, but again, the more issue was supposed to leave in the Dalek master plan, but no, her contract was up at the end of this serial.
I mean, I know what you mean, because we get a lot of power cuts in London, and when you're plunged into darkness, and you still think that these things are going to, like, you unconsciously, it's dark, and you instinctively click the switch. No
God, the worst. Oh, one of the worst scenes from the TV series My Family, the series that lasted about 9 years longer than it should have. First series, hilarious. Second, borderline. Third, oh, what the fuck. But yes, when the electricity, the heat, the water, everything's been cut off, the idiot cuts and comes downstairs. The television's not working in my room because the electricity's been cut off. Can I watch it down here with you? The electricity's been cut off.
This is the thing. Like, sometimes when the power goes out, I'm like, I got no internet. Let me turn on the PlayStation, and it occurs to me, wait.
Exactly.
Without electricity, the PlayStation won't work either.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Comedian Dylan Moran did a thing about that. It's like, we walk around like we know everything, and the second there's no electricity, it's like, no, broken magic. And you realise how. And actually, when I actually lost home internet and my BlackBerry, living without the... Actually, there's a few times in my life I've had to live without the internet, and it's like, I'll go and check Facebook at the internet cafe, I'll pay 50p. And like, you take those things away from us. It might be the scariest thing about the zombie apocalypse when it comes.
Oh yeah, this is the point I made in a previous episode of Doctor Who Fridays, when Cocky and I were talking about the zombie apocalypse, the fact that it's a power fantasy. Everyone imagines that they're going to be the leaders of the new community of survivors. They're going to be the rogue warriors of the wastelands. No, they'll be killing themselves the moment that the internet goes down for more than a week.
Yeah, okay, so I guess we've covered everything, and I think it's time for final thoughts and goodbyes. Actually, one thing I will say, I heard someone point out that this four-parter is basically comedy, bloodbath.
Yeah, that's about sums it up.
Yeah, just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, so Koki, your final thought and goodbye.
Yeah, good serial. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm just wondering how they're going to crowbar Christmas and New Year's in this, but may the hamster of incorporating mythology into your sci-fi rest upon your head.
And also don't forget that elements of Mission to the Unknown were seeding, although the original audience had a month to forget Mission to the Unknown, but anyway, and you, James, your final thought and goodbye.
Oh, yes, forgot to mention the very end, the fact that Stephen has been wounded not just by a Trojan sword, but by a poisoned Trojan sword. He has died in the TARDIS. Katerina thinks that she's now dead and is journeying through the afterlife. The Doctor needs drugs to save Stephen's life, but where can he get them? Where can he get them? Dun, dun, dun. Next week, the Daleks' master plan. But
it's actually twice in a row that a companion's had an injury that's carried on to the next one.
Oh, yes, the beginning of this serial, Vicky had a twisted ankle. But this is a little bit more serious than a twisted ankle, methinks.
That's very true. So a lot happening at once. You've got Vicky leaving, you've got Stephen mortally wounded. Yes, it's yeah. However,
no, sorry, I was just going to try, maybe bait Koki there, but no. Final thoughts. Yes, comedy, Bloodbath. A great serial. Do watch the recon. And yes, Teresa and I did deliberately watch Mission to the Unknown, The Mythmakers, and then Daleks' Master Plan in order to have the full continuity, in order for the first part of the Daleks' Master Plan to make sense. So I would strongly recommend that to anyone who is going to watch what, again, in spite of the Christmas and New Year's episode, is one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. So absolutely looking forward to next week, chomping at the bit almost, and may the great holy donkey bless your house for 7 generations.
And well, what I will say to people is may the Moffat jar be with you. and oh, hang on, next episode, the Daleks' Master Plan.